thanks to the SGX3 team for inviting us to talk to you today. I see many names that I'm familiar with out there in the audience. I'd like to keep this as informal as possible, so if you have questions during this presentation, please feel free to stop me, interrupt, whatever you need to do. I also have some colleagues in the audience who might jump in and say a word or two, depending on what your questions are. So feel free to just stop me at any point. Just to introduce myself, my name is Tom Maiden. I work at the Pittsburgh Supercomputing Center. In this regard, I am working with the Access Operations team as the Access RP coordinator. And essentially what that means is I try to help sites as they're coming into the Access program get going and troubleshoot any of the things they might have problems with. So this presentation is basically going to introduce you to what Access is and talk a little bit about how that is can integrate with SGX3 and gateways and how those can be running through this program. Thank you to a couple of my colleagues in Access, Stephen Deems, Danuka De Silva, and Jeremy Fisher for contributions to this slide deck. So first and foremost, there is no cyber infrastructure without people. The people in this room, I think I'm preaching to the choir in this group, at least from those of you that I know. This is all about all of us. We are the ones behind the scenes making things work, making sure that the work that needs done gets done where it needs to be done with the least amount of effort on the end of the researcher. So no matter whether you're talking about a gateway or a long-standing Fortran running program, that's what it comes down to, is the people behind the scenes making it happen. Those people are more than just come to mind, though, when you start thinking about that, right? It's people in the data centers making sure that the machines are plugged in and powered up correctly, that they're cooled and chilled and appropriately. It's the people that are supporting the tickets, right? I'm having a problem with my ID and my identity is not working correctly. It's the networking people, it's the scientific support people, right? All of these people come together in this one overarching thing to make all of this work, and it's pretty amazing that it works as well as it does sometimes, considering all the moving parts. But it's because of you and your colleagues why this is even working as well as it is. So the National Science Foundation funded the Access program. One thing that most people don't understand early on, or that they can't really comprehend, is that this is absolutely free of cost to the researcher. The National Science Foundation, gave this grant to a number of centers and to a number of RPs, and there are bits and pieces of funding that already happened, which means that the researcher at the end does not need to contribute any money out of pocket at all. What you do have to do is submit a proposal and tell us what you're going to do, but I'll get to that in a little bit later. In earlier instances of this program, a lot of that had to be tied with other supporting grants, but I'll get to that in a moment as well. That's no longer needed in Access either. So a little history lesson. This program goes back to the early 2000s. It's changed names over the years, but the idea remains the same. Back in the early 2000s, it was called TerraGrid, and then when that program ended, the Exceed program began. When Exceed ended, the Access program began. So we're going on 25 years of programs like this, that with a lot of the same people and a lot of the same players, I should say. But what is Access? Well, this is when you need to go beyond your desktop or your laptop, right? A lot of times your computing programs can do just well. It's your resources at your local institution or even on your desk. This is for when you can't do that, when it's too big or will run for too long, or perhaps has a component that is not available to you in your desktop or on your campus. Where can you find that? Well, you can come to Access and get that. One of the really nice features of this program is that it's all under one umbrella. So there's one way to come in, you get one identity, to start this. You write your proposal. You can ask for resources at a bunch of different places, and you may get that a different identity at some of those. We'll get into that in a little bit as well. But you can always come back to that first access and have your one grant proposal, whether you're trying to work in San Diego or Texas or wherever across the map that you happen to be. And you can then have one ticketing system, one support team, one documentation set of pages. It's all centralized and centrally located, so you don't need to really remember a million different URLs. You can always come back to the same place and say, I'm running a job on machine X. What do I need to do? If you don't get that answer right there, at least it says, okay, here's where you go to find that answer. So it's pretty convenient in my eyes. I mentioned the outgrowing your laptop. I think at least the people on this call that I know already know all of this, so I won't go too deeply into it. But your desktop and your laptop computers do continue to get better, and sometimes that's going to be the solution for small things. But once you don't, you've outgrown that is when you need to look to a more national resource. Some of the things that are available within this program. Of course, there are a lot of CPU systems. There are a lot of different accelerated GPU systems. We have some H100s online now. There's a lot of other flavors of GPUs out there. Of course, with a lot of this comes data storage, right? So we have some very large drives and also tape backup storage. If you need longer term storage, you can find that in some of these cases. You can find data repositories. You can find things that are available to you on these machines already that you don't need to go and recreate yourself or download yourself. Someone's already done that for you. One of the big benefits is a lot of the software is already there for you. It's already the version that works well on that platform. That it's created by someone else. It's their job to do this, right? So most of the software will just work for you once you land there. Of course, you might have your own needs, and you might have to talk to somebody about updating that for you. In some cases, you could do it yourself, and that's fine as well. But the underlying thing is that someone is there to help you through that process. We also do have some performance monitoring and ways to see, is my code taking advantage of this node correctly? Is it using the GPU when I think it's using the GPU? That sort of thing. And I see some of my friends from the Access Metrics team out there, so they could elaborate on that if you wanted to hear that. So how do we do this? Well, I'm part of the Access Operations Group. JP joined us today. This kind of was his baby back in the beginning, where we have this notion of integration roadmaps, and essentially that means that when an RP wants to come in and join the Access program, they have a set of instructions that is broken down into some easily digestible pieces about how they do that. And we have a different roadmap for each of these kinds of things. So for cloud, for compute, for storage, online services, and in this group, specifically science gateways. So we've taken it from a large manual of things of here's what you need to do to, all right, well, let's just start with this piece first. And then, okay, to do that, I need this piece. And it rolls really nicely one to the other. And in some cases, for those that are not going to be fully access integrated, they don't even need to do all of those things. These are not all mandatory, so you can sort of pick and choose what you need to do. Um, for for the in we are now terming some of those things as badges. Um, each one of these things, if you choose to do your access resource description, for instance, you can get a badge that says they are described in the access catalog. If you do access ticketing, you can get a badge that says this RP uses the access ticket system. So it's a good way and quick way for the end users to say, oh, okay, I understand. If I need help there, I just go through access for this group. And it's also a convenient way for the RP to say, we don't really need that. We're not going to do that piece of this, so they can pick and choose in that way. Some of the benefits to this, I mentioned, I think it's more modular, more flexible. It's easier for the researchers to get it. I think to say, all right, what is available under this program for this resource? Well, it's on this, that, and the other, rather than the full catalog. And for access for us, it's easier for us to manage and track where we are. It's a better way to say how far has this gone with this particular resource, and what do they still need to do to come up to speed in this certain area. Science gateways, which I think you all know about, right? Because this is why you're here. So I won't go into too much of the detail about what this is, but yes, one of the great things about science gateways is that you don't need to um, learn about the underlying program. You want to do a small thing that gives you a certain result on a certain genome or something like that. You can go and find that gateway, and you can submit your job, and you get results back pretty quickly. You don't need to care what hardware it's running on in most cases. You don't need to care uh, what work has been done behind the scenes to make this work for you. You're just worried about submitting your information and getting your results back. And really, I don't think there's an easier way in the community to do that than through Science Gateways. Currently in Access, we have over 40 active community gateways, and some of those are listed there. I won't read the list for you, but I'm sure some of you or most of you are familiar with a lot of the ones that are already there. This is the gateway roadmap. So if a new gateway were to come into Access, these are what we recommend that they would need to do. That have to tell us, what does your gateway do? Um, Allocations, how does that work for your gateway? What are the metrics? What are the usage statistics? Do you advertise for your training? And do you want your community to get information from us as you're announcing things or doing changes or things like that? You can spin up what we call an Access Affinity group to do that. I should mention, and I haven't yet, that the Jetstream 2 group in Indiana is just a little bit different in terms of what they are in Access. They are one of our cloud resources. So the gateways there are just slightly different, and this was provided to me by Jeremy. They do gateway web hosting. You can host your data sets. You can host your security services are taken care of there for you. You can use Jupyter Hub with them already, and they have a lot of instances that they already have ready to go for gateways. So it's a pretty easy way to spin up a gateway if you've not done it before in Access. The nice thing about Jetstream 2 is that you can start up or tear down your instance as you need it or not. But if it's something that you want to have running all the time, that also works just fine. So I will parrot Jeremy a little bit here and say, if you're spinning up a gateway, just assume it's going to run, and make sure you get the units that are commensurate for it to run all the way through, rather than worrying about taking it down and back up. But anyone that's interested in that sort of thing, we can have a conversation afterwards, and or most likely I would point you to the Indiana team, which is more versed in that resource. Requesting a project. So if you were coming into the Access program, um, first of all, I should mention that you need to be a US-based researcher or investigator. And that does not mean that it means that you have to have an affiliation with a US-based institution. You can have folks that are not US-based researchers on the grant, they just cannot lead the grant. So if you have a collaborator in another country, that's totally fine. You just have to have the lead investigator be from the US institution, since this is funded by the National Science Foundation of the United States. Um, One big change in this program, as opposed to the prior programs, graduate students are now eligible. We didn't used to allow this. This is now a big thing that people are taking advantage of. You essentially just have to have someone in your department confirm that yes, you are who you say you are. You are a graduate student working on X, Y, and Z. And yes, I'm the faculty member that says you are who you are. It's not a really hard process at all. Um, One of the other advancements that we've come to in this access is that you can have multiple grants. In the past, it was really hard to get multiple grants for one PI. Now, if you have multiple projects that are receiving multiple funding for other things, and you have an award already from the NIH or the NSF for your work, you can then go ahead and get a second grant and split it off. You can split your computation that way. It's a nice thing for large groups that may have a bunch of different graduate students working on different things. So that it may not matter to you, but it matters a lot to some. Um, how do you get a grant in terms of like what does it take to actually do that? If you want a small startup grant, it's really small. It's like here's the title of my project and here's a paragraph explaining what I want to do. Honestly, you can get some really good amount of units with just that. If you want to go a little bit beyond that, and I think it's at the moment, so I should mention the way that units are giving out. They are requested in terms of access credits, and then you have to go back and exchange those credits for different resources. So I'm not going to be specific in terms of how many credits is for a certain unit because that changes depending on which machine you're asking for. But the initial grant, the startup level is 400,000 credits. And for some of the CPU clusters in Access, that's 1 core hour per credit. So if you were just going for the base grant on a base CPU, that's about 400,000 hours of processing with just writing your title in a paragraph. So it's a substantial amount. And most people, we request that you start there. And if you outgrow that, we can automatically move you up the level when you submit sort of a what have I done and here's my results from the startup. In the past, the award duration was a year. We have changed that to allow it to align directly with your supporting grant. So if you have an NIH grant that lasts for 3 years, we can make your computing grant last to that end date as well, just for your ease of your use. So the Explorer is what I was talking about a moment ago, where it's just a small abstract paragraph. Um, in most cases, those Explorer grants are turned around within a day. From the time you submit it to the time you are on the machine can be under 24 hours for most RPs. The next level up, you might have to write a couple of pages about what you'd like to do. And or I didn't mention yet classroom activities. If you're running a course or if you'd like your students to go ahead and participate in a course, you're going to teach a course that uses some of the access resources, that might take a little bit more than that initial startup. So that can also be done with the next level up, Discover. That will get reviewed, but this program favors classwork activities a lot. So I don't think I've seen a large classroom activity get turned down in my time, which has been a while. So that'll take a one pager. It'll be reviewed by the ERP that you choose, and we'll even help you get the accounts on for your students. Let's see what's next. Oh, here's an example of what that looks like when you are applying for an Explorer, which would be that second level. So it's going to ask you for what the title is, what you want this to be, what you want the public to see for the abstract in our public pages. And then we always do collect things like keywords and fields of science, and that just helps us with our reporting to NSF, and you know, so that they know who is using what and which which machines within the program are doing what sort of science. That's important to us as RPs and to the NSF as they decide what the next set of platforms are going to be. You can add additional personnel in this startup request, but you don't have to. You can add them later as well. One thing I like to point out for people that haven't used this before, you can note someone as a allocation administrator, which basically means that they can then go in and do all of these things for you. So if you have a grad student that you really trust and they're really going to be the ones doing the work, you can, as the researcher, be the PI, but the grad student can have all of the privs to do all of the online stuff that you don't really need to worry about then. That turns out to be a good way to do it for a lot of groups. We do ask if you have supporting grants to please let us know about those because again, for reporting purposes, this is necessary. And also then if you wanted a second grant, you become eligible if you already have a supporting grant for one of the other ones. And then of course your CV. We do vet PIs to find out, make sure that they are who they say they are. We try to do a pretty good job of that. And it's more important on certain resources than others. Some of the more private resources do a lot more due diligence of making sure that the people that are landing on that resource are in fact who they say they are. We're in the era of AI bots and things like that, so we have to increasingly be careful. I did mention, I think in one of those slides about the turnaround time for certain things being less than a day. We've really tried to improve this in the Access project. A typical project, and what is typical? Well, I guess I would say maybe an average project or a normal project. Time from the submission to when people start using resources are within about 9 days. That can be much faster, depending on the resource and depending on the group, but that's grown or I'm sorry, shrunk to 9 days over the last couple of years. We try to turn around all of the startups really quickly. The allocations team does a great job of taking in the startups and just depending on the RP, if they've already said yes, go ahead and just approve startups for us. That can just happen, and then it just takes some back end communications between the databases to make sure that accounts start pushing down to the machines and such. But really, some people can be running within a couple of days. 3 days, it says, are about average for landing on the resource. One of the recent updates of the allocations team is the portal that you log into. They did it. It's a graphical interface. It's way easier to understand than it used to be, and it shows you pretty graphs and charts about where your credits are going, and you can click down and see which users are using what. So it's a really been a time saver for the PIs in terms of finding out what's happening underneath their grant. Once you get the credits, like I mentioned, the credits are what you get first, and then you go into this application right here and you exchange those credits for time on different resources. This one in particular just has a couple of things. Jetstream, which I've mentioned, PSC Bridges has a couple of different flavors. So I think I mentioned CPU and GPU jobs, but at PSC we also have a large memory cluster, which is EM in this case. Some of the other sites have similar things. So if you're doing molecular dynamics or things like that that need a little bit larger memory, there are options for you under this program to do so. And then it will still show you your credits there as well. One of the things that I will mention for my colleagues within Access, if you do get a grant and you do want to try some of these things, ask for enough units to where you're actually going to get something done. What isn't really a good idea is asking for 100 units to do this and 100 units to do that, and that just it becomes a logistical problem for yourself as well as our teams. So, ask for 50,000. If you find out you don't use that, it's not lost. You can then go back later and say, you know what, this resource didn't really work out for me. Instead, I'd like to try NCSA's machine, and you could just put in a credit exchange request, and it's no problem at all. So please try to avoid those little dribs and drabs of requests coming in. So from the beginning, you would register for an Access ID. You would figure out what kind of project type that fits your needs. We always recommend that that is Explore unless you've done this before. You complete your request form, add your co-PIs and such, and then after that is awarded, you will exchange your credits for available resources. There's something new in Access right now as well, where the Harvard Business School is actually doing a bit of a experiment and changing some of the exchange rates for certain resources to see if that is how much that affects your choices when you go into look for a resource. So you might see, hey, this week machine X is on sale for 75% discount or something like that. So you be on the lookout for that. You can get some good deals depending on what's on sale this week. But mostly you're going to look for, well, I really need GPUs. I really need this type of GPU. What resource within Access has that? Okay, that's what I'm going to then ask for. Or if you're a long-standing user, we find out that you just ask for the resource that you've been using traditionally within in Access or Exceed prior. So we do know there's some human behavior and you form relations, and that's all just fine. But just know that there are other options for you as well. There is a link, and I'll make sure that these slides are available. You can get your first project guide. That's a really good step-by-step that goes through pretty much everything I've talked about so far in this talk. Here's a nice little map about who is utilizing things. So first of all, we have a pretty good coverage of the East Coast. Obviously, we're missing some things in the Plain States and would like to do a little better in that area. But we do get around the United States, and you see that there some of these larger credit usage are in a lot of different places. So this project is very diverse and across lots of different sites. It's not just one or two people that are doing most of the running and access. It's truly nationwide. Where to find help? The ticket system I mentioned before. Some of the sites have their own ticketing system as well that you might be pointed to depending on your question. The Q&A bot is a good place to go and ask questions. It is the one thing to know about that is it doesn't continue to retain the information. So you ask it a new question each time rather than building upon the question that you asked prior. But it does a really nice job of sorting through the catalogs and finding the information that you're asking about. Talk to me. My email's here. Most of you, I think, know my email and have probably received emails from me about my training courses. So I might be in your spam folder, but if I'm not, feel free to reach out to me directly. My other team members as well. We're glad to help and walk you through any of this processes. Oh, right. So Mr. Deems asked me to just put this slide in here. If you are at an institution and you want to have an easy way of introducing access to your campus, they have an API that you can just drop into your web pages that can point your campus to our pages so that you don't have to worry about refreshing it. It'll all happen in the background, and you can just link directly to us if you'd like to make this available to those of you on to your colleagues on your campus. And one final thing that we added, just in case we always get a question about what is this NAIR thing I keep hearing about? Well, NAIR and Access are different, although there are a lot of overlaps. If you're looking for a long-term research and educational initiative, stick with Access. If you are working in AI only and you're looking to do a short-term project, you can look into the NAIR pilot program. I will tell you though that the processing of requests and the background things are just much faster and more easily handled in the Access program. So you really should be a very small set of people really should be interested in their pilot, but I would feel remiss if I didn't at least mention it. And that is my final slide. It's been a quiet group, and I didn't really intend to go all the way through without asking you for questions. I apologize about that. But are there any questions? And as I mentioned, I do have some colleagues from my team as well as other Access teams in the audience. So there's a number of us that could answer things for you. Thanks, Jesse.
Yeah. Yeah, Tom, I have a question for you. Well done. I learned a lot. I've been in this business for about a year and a quarter, so I'm still real new to, give or take, a few weeks, to HPC and, these sort of this NSF project environments, kind of awesome and really complex. But my question has to do sort of like with the distinctions between, I work with at IU on the Jetstream team, coming
Hmm.
from more of a traditional IT background. The question has to do with sort of the distinctions between discover and accelerate. I know it has to do with like size of project.
Yeah.
But can you talk a little more like granularly about what would separate those things out?
Yeah, it's entirely size of project. And actually, I'm not going to make everyone sick by going back there. I will jump to it. But let me find where it was. Of course, it's going to be harder to find now. Nope. There we go. Okay, yeah. So it's entirely the scale, right? We I don't think we insist upon, but we strongly encourage the initial request to come in as Explore. And the reason for that is simple. It's the quickest way to get you started, so it doesn't, put any delay or any review layer on top of it. Once you get in, the two are no different in terms of what you have access to within the program. So, go ahead and get that couple 100,000 credits, exchange them for what you want to try, and start trying it. Now, that will allow you to then obviously test your work on something and try to see what your are you utilizing the machine properly? Is the software stack to what you need it to be? Is the support team on that resource available to help you install software? Those sorts of things you can iron out quickly on that Explore level. And then when you come back and you say, okay, I'd like to use more units, well, now you have some things like, what are my scaling numbers? How many cores or GPUs can I use on this, and what kind of results did I get? That just makes that discover level a lot easier once you've already done some of those things. And of course, the others follow along with that.
And then in one quick follow-up real quick, and then I will back out. Science gateways, obviously, I see those as being, as I look at them, and I see them as being a little more long-term, sort of sustainable, subject-oriented, compute tools. How, how,
Yep.
how does that gateway fit into this project, or are these like unrelated compartments? Thank you.
So they're very much related. I like to think of it as, if you need to do this particular thing that this particular gateway does, you may not have to worry about any of these other things, right? That might be all you really ever need to do, and I think that's a great thing. I think that's an excellent thing for the community and for the researcher that really only needs to stick with one or two things that are in their domain. The overall grant will come in when your needs are just outside of that gateway, right? So you need to go ahead and ask for your own grant. But also, part of this is about if you have a gateway and it's not running on Access, let's make that happen because I think they are a tremendous way to get HPC to a broader community in an easy way.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey, Tom. I just have a couple of questions that might, also help answer some thoughts the Science Gateways community might be thinking. Um, One that I wanted to start with is what trends are you seeing on how gateways are evolving and how is Access adapting to support these changes?
Good questions. So I think gateways are, let's say, not the normal mode of access operations, right? They're a little bit in their own. I don't want to call it a silo, but so the main difference to me and the main sticking point is that gateways are gateways manage their own set of users, right? So if you want to use one of these gateways and you register for them, that gateway has to sort of hold the ID list of that and figure out who that is behind the scenes. Whereas when it's running on one of the larger systems, it's running as that gateway name rather than an individual. So to that end, I think there's some things that we can't really improve upon, right? Because it unless we get full federation to everyone, to where you can have one access or one ID that just is working everywhere, that's going to be a tricky thing to solve. And maybe JP wants to help me out a little bit there, but that's the thing to me that I think would be the big benefit if we could do it. But the if we could do it is a really big if.
Yeah, that is a big challenge. And one thing that Access does to facilitate that bridge between, the identity of the researcher on your gateway and you as a gateway using resources as a gateway, not as the researcher, is that we do offer a service where the gateway can tell us after you've used Access resources, which of your gateway users was the one that used that resource or that ran those jobs so that Access has more visibility into that, who the researchers actually are. And in fact, the metrics service of Access uses that information for long-term analysis of, what resources are researchers using, whether they're using them directly the traditional way or whether they're using them through science gateways. Um, I think the other two challenges that have been long-term challenges is how do gateways manage moving data in and out of access resources and also executing jobs on access resources. And traditionally, many gateways have had to like SSH in and submit jobs from their gateway when they want to run on access. In Access, we have a new workflow service that many of you may be familiar with called Pegasus. And I think Pegasus is probably something new to Access that didn't exist in the previous programs that might make it easier for a science gateway to submit jobs to Access resources and track those jobs as they execute. So Pegasus is something new that we've offered that maybe helps gateways.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, JP. Thank you, Claire. All right, looks like it's a little bit of a dwindling crowd, but any other questions from those who have remained? Well, if not, I just want to thank you again for having us here. I'll be glad to send this deck to Janae if that's helpful. And again, my information is at the end of this presentation, but if you ask anyone in the community, they will find me. I'm pretty easy to find.
Thank you
Great.
very much, Tom.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tom. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Hope to see you next month at our next webinar. And thank you again to the Access team for this great presentation.
Thank you very much.